I began teaching in 2001, fresh out of TAP here at Faith Builders, and I always loved reading as a child. I did a lot of reading. And I had heard from different people about how children love flannelgraph. And so 2 years later, I took the plunge and bought a big flannelgraph set and began using it with my class, and they loved it. Now, of course, it was a fair amount of work for the teacher to get it all ready, but they really liked it. And one of the things that the lady told me when I bought it is that you need to spend time reading the story out loud to yourself. So that's a big part of teaching with flannelgraph, or learning to tell stories, is just to talk through the story out loud to yourself. She said you need to do it 5 or 10 times. And so at the beginning, I did that. I read it a good 5 times out loud to myself, besides reading it in the Bible so you know what actually happened, which is important. So you know what is truth and what is not truth, and what is added on to make it interesting. What may have been truth, but we don't know for sure. So some of the benefits for telling stories is that you can make it fit to your audience. If you see that the children are getting a little bored, well, then you can speed up, or you can add something a little more interesting, or something that brings it down to their level, throw in a question or something for them. You can also use familiar words. If you have 1st and 2nd grade, some of the Bible story books use big words that they don't understand. So if you tell the story, you can break it down with words they understand. For older students, you can always add in interesting facts about geography or customs from that time point and make it interesting if you tell the story. An important part of the flannelgraph story is getting it ready ahead of time. Now, the other thing important is to get your figures all in order so that you're not fumbling around trying to find the right one at the right time, and placing them face side down so the children aren't craning to look what's coming next. So just a few little pointers. Our story begins with a lady that was very sad. She was a lady whose husband had died. Now, her husband had loved the Lord and had wanted to do what was right, but they were not a very rich family. They were a poor family. And her husband had to borrow money. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us why he had to borrow money. Did someone get sick and he needed to borrow money to pay for the doctor? Or did they need new clothes or shoes and didn't have enough money? The Bible doesn't tell us why he had borrowed money, but he had borrowed money from someone, and then he died. And there again, we don't know why he died, if it was an accident or something. But this lady was very distressed because she had 2 boys. It was her and her 2 boys at home, and the husband had died. But the man that she had borrowed money from had come to her and said, you need to pay back the money. And she looked around her house. She had no money to pay him back. And so the man said, if you don't pay back the money, I'm going to have to take your boys, and they're going to be my slaves. Now, we don't see slaves nowadays. In the United States, it's against the law to have a slave. You're not allowed to have a slave. But back in the Bible times, people did have slaves. And the thing about slaves was they had to work without any pay. As if Carlin would have to go and work for someone else, whatever he told him to do, no pay for you. And if you don't work hard enough, I might beat you. And I'll only give you bread if you don't maybe do very well. So they could treat the slave kind of mean if the master wanted to. So can you imagine if someone would come and say, okay, Carlin and Adrian, you have to come and work for us now because your mom doesn't have enough money to pay. That was a terrible thing. Of course this lady was sad. She was very sad about that. But she knew where to go to get some help. She went to Prophet Elisha's house, and she told him the problem. She said, Prophet Elisha, there's a man that my husband owed money to, and now we owe money to, and my husband's not living anymore, and he wants to take my 2 sons as slaves to pay for the money because we don't have the money. And that would be terrible. And of course, Prophet Elisha felt sorry for the lady. And he said, well, what do you have in your house? Do you have anything you can pay back to the man? She said, the only thing I have in my house is 1 jug of oil. We are just out of food. We don't have extra clothes. We have nothing. And so Prophet Elisha said, tell you what, you go home, you get your sons to borrow pots from the neighbors, pots and jugs, and fill those pots and jugs with oil. How was she going to fill pots and jugs with oil when she had only 1 jug of oil? But the lady obeyed. She obeyed what Prophet Elisha said. She went back to her house, where she was with her boys, and had her 1 jug of oil. And she called her sons, and she told them what Prophet Elisha had told her. She said, go out to the neighbors and borrow jugs and things from the neighbors and bring them here. So they did. They went out and borrowed jugs. They borrowed tall jugs and short jugs. They borrowed yellow jugs and green jugs. All kinds of jugs, jugs and jugs. So they borrowed all those jugs, and when they had gotten a whole bunch from the neighbors, they closed the door in the house, as Prophet Elisha had said, and their mother took the one jug of oil that they had, and she began to pour oil into the jugs. She told them to bring jugs, so she filled that one with oil, and they set it over to the side. She filled the next one with oil, and they set it over to the side, and the next one with oil, and set it over to the side, and the next one. How could she do that out of one jug of oil? Do you want to give me any ideas? How could she do that? How could she, Carla?
Well, did the Lord provide more oil in there?
That's right. The Lord made that jug keep on having oil and oil and oil. And so they filled all of these. They filled all of these jugs with oil until at last the mother said, bring me another jug. And there were no more jugs. They were all full of oil. All that oil from one pot of oil. So the mother said, wow, what are we going to do now? So she quickly went back to Prophet Elisha and said, Prophet Elisha, what shall we do now? And Prophet Elisha said, take all that oil to the market and sell it, and then you will have plenty of money. Now, their markets back then were different than ours. We mostly go to Walmart or the grocery store if we want oil. Back then, they had sort of like a farmer's market or maybe sort of like a yard sale where everyone brought their things they had to sell. So the mom and the boys took all their jugs of oil to the market, and people would bring their jugs of oil, and they would pour out of their jugs into the people's jugs, and they would buy it from them and take the oil home. And they sold all that oil, and they had a pile of money. And so, when the man came and knocked on the door and said, I'm coming for my slaves, then the mom said, here's your money. You can't take them for slaves after all. Do you think the man was surprised? I think, too, he was surprised. And not only that, they had plenty of money left over. They had plenty of money to buy. Maybe they bought some chairs. Maybe they bought some new clothes. Plenty of money to have a good supper that night. Plenty of money to live on until the boys were old enough to work and help with getting more money for them. So God took care of them. And that is our story today. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of assessment like I might do in school. So you can pretend it's in school, and I'm going to ask you a question, and you can just answer the question. Any of you in the front row or any of you in the back row. So, no, you can just shout it out. So what did God give the woman to sell and save her boys from slavery?
Oil.
Oil, yes. How many boys did the woman have?
2.
2, that's right. So very simple questions like that, you can always have your class just respond. Sometimes in class we do a turn and tell. That means the person you're sitting beside, you're going to turn and talk together. So you two can talk together, and you two can talk together. So think about, and this is maybe more a thinking question, something that's open-ended. If you had been the boys, how would have you felt at the beginning of the story? When you knew you might be sold as a slave, or you probably would be. Think about how you would have felt. And now you can turn and talk to your partner, and the rest of you can turn and talk as well if you'd like to. Okay, and some of these questions are dependent on time, if you have time to explore some of those things with the children. Sometimes you may want to add personal applications like, has God ever helped you like he did this widow and her son? Have you ever asked God for something and he helped you? So, and you can give some of your own personal examples, like many times I have prayed and said, God, what do you want me to do next? Like there's 10 things I could do. What's the next thing to do? And God brings that to mind.